Welcome back to Weekend Live. Well, returning to one of our top stories, and one of the two teenagers charged over the murder of Melbourne doctor Ashley Gordon was on bail at the time, according to the Herald Sun. The incident has highlighted the state government's proposal to raise the age of criminal responsibility. Well, joining me now live here in our Melbourne studio is the opposition's spokesperson on police issues and the Shadow Police Minister, Brad Batten. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Simon. Good to be here.
This revelation this morning that the accused in this murder that has occurred in Melbourne's eastern suburbs was out on bail at the time. What do you make of that development?
Yeah, look, the allegations from the Herald Sun are atrocious. It's a highlight of what's been happening here in Victoria, where we've got young offenders who are entering the justice system. They continue to enter the justice system, but the problem is the police go and do their role. They get in there and they're getting bail straight away, even for violent crimes. So we need to then assess why and what's changed in bail where community safety is no longer the priority.
I guess the reason that the government introduced these reforms was obviously due to the coronial inquiry in regards to Yorta Yorta woman Tanya Day, and the issues around that so complex that obviously sparked this these sets of reforms from the government. But what we're seeing play out across the suburbs now, or at least accused and alleged crimes that have been timelined in the paper, is it time for the government to look at this, the approach that they're taking, and maybe review that at all?
Oh, I think anything when we're talking about criminal statistics, crime, you need to review continuously because things change. And what we're seeing now is, and I know we've spoken to Michael O'Brien, our Shadow Attorney General, when we're talking about the indictable offence for committing a crime whilst on bail, these are a lot of the things that need to be reassessed, we need to redraw. And the problem with the government at the moment is they're trying to look at ways they can weaken these bail laws. We're saying right at the moment, we're seeing too many actions like this. And Simon, it's not long ago, we used to say one day someone's going to die when someone's on bail. Someone's died. So now it's time to act on it.
The government's saying early intervention might help, though, in this. I mean, that's what a government spokesperson's told media today. What do you make of that?
Yeah, you'd know as well as I do. You send out a government spokesperson when the minister's not game to come up and front up to it. Why won't they front up to it? They've cut funding for intervention programs here in our state. Community services, community justice have coming out saying they've got 50 caseloads instead of 25. That's what's creating more of the issues of people coming into the justice system.
So you reckon the minister should be out there speaking about this maybe today or tomorrow?
The minister, the premier, they're the ones that have cut the funding. There is evidence now on the table, not from us, this is from the unions as well. There is less number of people to do these cases, therefore they're getting overworked and we're seeing less outcomes, less positive outcomes for the community.
I wanted to also ask you about the broader social reforms that the government's looking at, particularly pill testing. We've seen the police take a strong stance, at least the Force Command, saying at the moment there's no plans for us to change our view on it. Police Association have been out there firmly against introducing a pill testing regime. This week, the Premier said she'd take further advice, and it seemed to indicate to some observers that the government may change its stance in Victoria, of course, with ACT going a step in introducing that. From a police point of view, and as a former police officer, would you at all back any circumstances where pill testing would be introduced?
Yeah, I've personally been against it for a long period of time because I'm of the view it's okay to say no. So we need to say to kids and young people it's not okay to take drugs. The outcome, again, we've seen multiple people either dying or in severe injuries due to taking those drugs. And even the testing may not have picked up on that. We need to improve the amount of counselling we've got available for these kids for addiction. We need to make sure that kids can get referrals and referred into the right direction rather than going in and saying it's okay to have the drugs at these festivals.
Is that going to stop overdoses, though, at festivals, an approach such as that?
Yeah, look, I can't say it will stop any of the overdoses there, but the reality is what we want to see is make sure kids have the education and better education to not take the drugs. The Police Command, the Police Association have said it would be too hard for them, more difficult for them. We need to make sure that we're backing the police, backing their word and trusting them. We've had a committee go around the world, which I know Fiona Patten was on at the time, that ended up coming back, and the then now Emergency Services Commissioner who went over there with an open mind, came back saying, no, we shouldn't have pill testing.
Just finally, I just want to ask you, you've obviously been in the Parliament for some time. The Premier, Daniel Andrews, obviously last year resigned, and everyone's been waiting to see what he may do next. And today we find out, courtesy of the Australians, Damon Johnston, that there's been 2 companies that Mr Andrews has registered with ASIC. Criticism that one of those companies may have a shareholding held by a Chinese-Australian businessman. Is there any concerns at all from the opposition about this? I mean, you know, is the former Premier allowed to do what he's allowed to do?
Well, I suppose you get to a stage, he's no longer in politics. He can effectively do what he wants. I think it raises questions, though, around the fact he spent $88,000 to travel to China and didn't take any media and hasn't disclosed what he's done over there. Was any of that involved in setting up his post-politics career? Because that was in a very short period of time after. These are questions the feds get asked all the time, who they deal with after. I think it should happen the same in the state. Daniel Andrews needs to come out and just explain what he did over there originally using taxpayers' money, and has any of that been used to set up businesses for his own, feathering his own nest in the future, or putting anything with our sovereignty at risk in the future for dealings with the Chinese government.
Yeah, it's interesting you raised the China trip. Of course, media weren't invited on that trip, and freedom of information requests we've put into the government certainly put back information, but pretty regimented, and stuff is redacted too. Well, I digress. Brad Batten, appreciate your time, and thanks very much for coming in to the studio today.
Thank you, Simon.
All right, well, Brad Batten there, who's the Liberal member for Berwick, of course. Yeah, I almost said Gembrook, didn't I there, Brad? But, of course, your old seat after the redistribution. Appreciate your time. And, of course, we did invite the Victorian Government onto the program today to speak, and we have so far not had a acceptance.